All right, good afternoon, evening, or morning. How y'all doing today? Welcome back to Mr. Morrow's algebra class. Today we are going to continue with inequalities, and we're going to talk about one-step inequalities. Now, what I have here, this little paragraph, pretty much says it all, okay? When I'm solving inequalities, okay, please think about equations, because you're going to solve inequalities exactly the same way. I mean exactly the same way as equations. That's why I said it's so important for you to really understand your equations, because if not, it's going to be a little tougher when we come to inequalities. The only difference between solving equations and solving inequalities is this right here. That's why I have an except. So solving inequalities is identical to solving equations, except whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, okay? Whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality sign. Now, let me explain the difference between multiplying by and multiplying to, because it's a big difference, okay? Let's say I have negative 2x is less than or equal to 10, okay? Remember what we talked about? Pretend that this is just a regular equation. What's the relationship between negative 2 and x? Are they being added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided? They're being multiplied. Very good. How do we cancel multiplication? Division. So here are my words. Am I not going to divide by negative 2? Okay, so I divided by a negative here, right? So since I divided by a negative, I flipped the inequality. So then the answer would be x is greater than or equal to negative 5. That's what I'm dividing by a negative. Let me show you what it is to divide to a negative, because it's different. Let's say I have 2x is less than or equal to negative 10. In this case, again, what's the relationship between the 2 and the x? They're being multiplied. How do you cancel multiplication? So you're going to divide by 2 this time. Did I divide by a negative or to a negative this time? So do I flip the inequality sign here? No. Please be careful with that. So if I divide by a negative, I flip the inequality. If I just divide to a negative, I do not flip the inequality. Yes, sir? Well, if both of them are negative, you divided by a negative, didn't you? As long as you're dividing by a negative, it doesn't matter what the other one is. Yes, sir?
This may be dependent on the number that's related to the variable, it's whether it's negative.
Correct, sir. This depends on the coefficient, it's called. The number being multiplied to the variable is called the coefficient. If the coefficient is negative and you have to multiply to get rid of it or divide to get rid of it, you got to flip the sign. For example, let's check this out. What if I have x over negative 2 is less than 5? Okay, what's the relation between the x and the negative 2 here? No, they're being divided, right? How do you get rid of that denominator down there? Multiply by the? Very good. So am I multiplying by a negative here? So what do I have to do the inequality? Flip it. Because I divided or multiplied by a negative. Now, let me just show you what happens when I multiply to a negative. If I have x over 2 is greater than negative 10, actually let's leave it as it was before or less, I'm still going to multiply by 2 over 1 to get my x alone, because I get rid of division with multiplication. I multiply by the reciprocal. Cancel that bad boy. This time I divided to a negative. So does my sign flip? No. Whoever said yes, please be careful. It only flips when you divide or multiply by a negative, not to a negative. Does that make sense, my friends? Okay, well, that's really 2, 3. So we went a little further than I wanted, but that's cool. So everything else is the same, though, y'all. And you're solving an inequality. I don't care how complicated it is. I don't care if it's even an absolute value inequality. I don't care if it's a multi-step or a two-step or a one-step. You follow the same exact procedures. The only difference, whenever you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip it. So, let's look at some examples today of just solving one-step inequalities by addition and subtraction. That's all we're going to focus on today. X plus 9 is less than or equal to 15. What's the relationship between the x and the 9? How do you cancel addition? X, so you subtract 9 to both sides. X is less than or equal to 6. I'm going to graph it. Let's graph it the easy way. 0, you always put the 0. Your reference point is 6. Close circle to the left. Does that make sense? Yes, sir, you have a question, my man. Okay. Y minus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 6. What's the relationship between the y and the negative 3? Or the y and the 3, sorry. Subtraction. How do you get rid of a subtraction? You're absolutely correct. You add 3 to both sides. Y is greater than or equal to negative 3. Absolutely. Graph that sucker. 0, my reference point is negative 3. Close circle. Y is greater than or equal to, so you're going to shade to the right. This should be in your brain. You should be making some connections here. You should be saying, wait a second. This is exactly like what Mr. Morrow said. This is exactly like equations. So far, there's no difference, right? Instead of an equal sign, you have an inequality sign. And we already learned how to write and read graphs, so this part should be so far pretty good, right, my brothers? All right, and sisters out there in the internet world who are watching this, not trying to discriminate. Okay, here I have 2.5 is greater than or equal to negative 3 plus w. How do I get w alone here? Yes, sir.
You have to undo the negative 3 with addition.
That's exactly correct. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So now what's 2.5 plus 3? Yeah, because it's just you add the whole numbers. That would be 5 and 1/2. Do I flip that? No, I didn't multiply or divide by a negative. Now, how do I read this correctly? Sir.
W is less than.
Come on, keep it going. Yes, don't be scared. You got it. Perfect. Well done. W is less than or equal to 5.5. Please, I know it's tempting to read left to right. I know it is. That's how we read a book. I understand. Or a comic book or a newspaper. I get it. But please try to remember that for inequalities, you always read from the variable first. Please. How about here? 0.7 is greater than or equal to x minus 0.4. What's the relationship between the x and the 0.4? Subtraction. How do we get rid of subtraction? Addition. So I'm going to add 0.4 to both sides. What does 0.7 plus 0.4 give me? 1.1. That's exactly correct. How do I read that correctly, gentlemen?
X is less than or equal to 1.1.
X is less than or equal to 1.1. And I forgot to graph the one before. Let's graph both of them. Look, for this is what I would do. Show that there's a 1. Show that there's a 2. I'm going to make it easy. And then here, put a 1.1. I'm pretty simple when it comes to graphing. I just want to make sure you understand what it means. And X is solid circle. Less than that, shade it to the left. Over here for the W is less than or equal to 5.5. I go 0, 5, 6. That's my 5.5. Closed circle also happens to be less than. Does that make sense, my friends? Promise? Yes, sir.
Why can't you just put 1.1 like
Okay. The question is, why can't you just do this, Mr. Morrow? 1.1. When we're dealing with whole numbers, I can accept that. But when we're dealing with decimals, I want you to understand that 1.1 is between 1 and 2. I know that sounds simplistic, but I got to make sure that you guys understand where these numbers are, that you understand the location of them. Does that help you understand why I want that? Thank you, my friend. So you could just put one number if it's just a whole number, just like example 2 or example 1. But when we're talking about fractions or decimals, I ask you please to put the actual solution in between two whole numbers. or integers because they may be negative. Thank you, sir. Does that make sense? Okay. The memory on your phone allows you to take up to 40 pictures. You have already taken 18 pictures. Write and solve and graph an inequality to show how many more pictures you could take. Okay. First of all, your camera allows you to take up to 40. What would up to 40 be? Less than or equal to or greater than or equal to? Very good. So you know that your camera can take less than or equal to 40 pictures. Does that make sense? How many pictures have you already taken? So don't you have 18 pictures plus how many more x, I don't know how many more, must be less than or equal to 40? Did you see how I just did that? It wasn't magic, I just used my head. I know that the camera can hold less than or equal to 40. I know I already took 18. So 18 plus what number is less than or equal to 40? Go ahead, son.
Just figuring out the facts they give you.
That's exactly right. Rewriting those facts as an equation. Yes, sir. That's exactly right. You subtract 18 to both sides to solve for x, sir. And x can be less than or equal to 22 pictures. Now, believe it or not, you may think that's just silly. But guys, it's really important. We use that all the time. You're at a trip, you're with your friends, you're with your girlfriend, you're with your family. It's good to know, okay, I got 22 pictures left. After that, I need a new memory card. Right? I mean, these are things that you may not think about, but they are useful, I promise you. Okay, the recommended dietary allowance, that's RDA, of iron for a female in Kathy's age group, 14 to 18, is 15 milligrams per day. Kathy has consumed 11 milligrams of iron today. Write and solve an inequality to show how many more milligrams of iron Kathy can consume without exceeding the RDA. Yes, sir. Did we need to graph number 5? Yes, we did. Sorry. So 0, 22, less than or equal to, go to the left. However, technically, where do we have to stop here?
0.
At 0, because you can't have negative pictures. Very good. Very good. Very good. Yes. Yes, sir. Why would you flip the sign? Did you multiply or divide by a negative? No, wrong. You cannot flip the sign here. If you flip the sign, then son, it means that you can take greater. You can take more than 22 pictures. Son, again, you're not listening to me. You want me to do it like this. Put it on the right-hand side, but keep the, no. You can't keep the inequality like that. You have to read from the inequality, son. The x is less than or equal to 40. This camera can take less than or equal to 40 pictures. You took 18 pictures plus how many more pictures is going to give me less than or equal to 40? How can I help you? Are you sure, my man? Thank you, sir. Okay, so number 6, guys. What's the equation here? Come on, I'm not going to do it for you. Try. Think. Okay, you took 11 milligrams already plus x, because I don't know how many more I'm going to have to take. Has to be less than or equal to 15. Talk to me, guys. What don't you get? Yes, sir. You can say the answer in 1 second. What don't you understand? Because I only heard a few of you guys giving me the equation. How can I help you, please? No, I understand that I need you. I help you setting up. Why? How can I help you set up? That's my question.
I think we mean like we just need to grab the numbers out of the paragraph. If we need to find them.
Yeah, you need to find the numbers and see what they mean. Remember, the intake, the total intake, has to be less than or equal to 15. That's what they told you right from the beginning. Okay? You already took 11. Plus, how many more gives me less than or equal to 15? Now, my boy, give me my answer, please. You subtract 11 to both sides. That's exactly right. X is less than or equal to 4. That's exactly right. However, we're dealing with real life stuff. So when I graph this, do I go into the negatives? No, I stop at the 0. Why? Because I can't take less than 0. You can't take a negative pill. Yes, sir. Or a negative vitamin. Does that make sense? Yes, sir. A hypothetical problem. The question was, what kind of problem would it be where it goes past 0? Not a real word problem. With real things, when you're talking about real things, real amounts, real sizes, real measurements, real amounts of food or money or vitamins in this case, you can't have negative money or negative walls or negative height or negative food. So you gotta think about, okay, can this be negative? How about if it was temperature? Could I have negative temperatures? Yeah, absolutely. It could be below 0. Very good. Okay, next. Max can bench press 220 pounds. He wants to bench at least 250. Write and solve an inequality to determine how many more pounds Max must lift to reach his goal. Okay, I understand that it's 30 pounds, but that would be wrong because it's an inequality. So an inequality doesn't have just one question, but I want an equation, an inequality. Write me the inequality. What is it? What is it, my brother? Very good. 220, which he already lifts, plus how much is going to give me at least. Remember we talked about at least? That's greater than or equal. So 220 plus how much more weight is going to give me at least greater than or equal to 250. Subtract 220 to both sides. X is greater than or equal to 30. So you were kind of right. 30 is one of the solutions. But what if I increase by 70 pounds? Now I'm over 250, right? Because he wants to bench at least 250. Does that make sense, my man? Promise, everybody? Okay. And then we can graph this, absolutely. 0, 30, close circle, greater than. And that can go to infinity forever. Does that make sense? All right, my friends. We're going to go ahead and just focus on 2-2 today, okay? I will not make you do anything for 2-3. But I'm going to go ahead and shut down now, and we'll do some practice on the board. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and I hope you learned a lot.